Before we begin, we light a candle for one of you, our kith and kin out there listening. When called on, we hold space for a voice, a story, or a name so that no ember burns alone.
And if any of you listeners have a request, want your name or story lifted up in this segment, or if there's anything you'd like us to address, please DM us on any of our socials at The Ember Report, or send us an email to emberdispatch@gmail.com. This week, the candle is for all of us, the happiness we feel at the mandate of the people.
Know that we are seen, and that our voice is heard. A flame is lit, your fire is carried. We remember you.
Welcome back to the Ember Report, where we're doing things differently, but more on that later. I'm Lydian, the voice in the flame.
I'm Len, the Witch of the Crossroads.
And I'm Sebastian, the Sorcerer of Annihilation.
Here is where we raise the lantern for the exiles.
Keep the tea hot for the queers, the cunning folk, and the activists who never fit the mold. Please remember to follow us everywhere you get social media, at The Ember Report, to keep up to date on things, and join us on our Patreon at patreon.com/The Ember Report.
This week we are joined by a highly acclaimed author and confirmed member of Antifa themselves. Storm Faerywolf is in the shop with us. Storm, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Come on in, family.
The fire is kindled.
The Sabbath begins now. Today, we need to talk to you about the People's Mandate, what that means and why it should bring you hope and joy, but also gear you up to fight fascism. But before we get into that, we want to take a moment to address the way we will be formatting our show going forward. Normally, we would like to take the time to pick certain news topics that drew our attention and we felt need to shed light on fights around the United States happening in the mainstream media. We still plan to do that. But instead of unloading all of that news on you at the beginning, we're taking advice from our spirits and our fans and instead sprinkling the news in throughout the conversation. We wanted to get our guests on sooner, instead of having them wait patiently for us to deliver the news, which they've all been lovely. So all of you previous guests, you've been so lovely. We're hoping this works out, but the reality is the show can change, adapt, and grow, and we're hoping this reflects the desire to do so, because that's what we want to do. We want to reflect, we want to grow, and we want to be better for you. With that said, let's go ahead and widen the circle. Storm, it is so lovely to have you join us here at the news desk. I personally have held you in such high regards, not just for your works, but also just because you're such a nice person. Like online. You've always been so nice to me online, and it's just been so lovely.
Oh, wow. Thank you.
You're welcome. That'll be $5 for the compliment. Sorry. We're in Trump's economy where things are a lot more expensive, so every compliment going forward is going to have to be paid forward. I'm going to start us off with a question, right? So the people servantly gave Trump administration a mandate with this latest election, but how has that been resonating with you? Like, have you felt inspiration and or the hopium, or are you still in shock? Do you think this was a fluke even?
No, certainly not a fluke. This was inevitable. Thank God. Thank all the gods that this was inevitable, right? This is what I've been praying for. Yeah, I felt it immediately, and that night I slept so well. And I haven't slept that great, for a while. So, no, it was nice to actually have some hope, right? I mean, I always had a shred of hope, but I feel like my hope kind of was resembling naivete, after being beaten down so many times. I'm like, oh no. I mean, the first time that Trump was elected, right? Right before that happened, everybody, I went to Europe like right before, and everyone was so like, oh my God, is Trump going to get elected? Oh no, I said, no, people aren't that dumb. I really had a higher opinion of my fellow citizens, and I have been dissuaded from that illusion, and especially the second time, I was like much more apprehensive when people said, "Oh, is he going to get it?" But I really didn't think so. I thought, "There's no way we're going to do it twice," and then we did it twice, and so I just realized, oh no, way more of my fellow citizens are horrible, horrible people than I thought before. Right? I was a little Pollyanna before, Now I know that a lot of people suck. And that's disheartening, but you got to keep going. And I think it also really shows us that when we find people that don't suck, we really need to hold on to them and praise them and, be nice to one another. I still think that kindness needs to be our guiding star through all of it, even our activism, even our anger. I think that kindness and compassion need to be at the core of what we do. And I know a lot of people might feel differently. One of the things that I talk about in terms of my spiritual practice in relation to this is I feel like we must cultivate compassion even for evil. And, that's something that comes up for me in the Anderson Fairy tradition. And I can talk about that later if you want. But, people are like, what do you mean? I'm like, yeah, I have to approach even Donald Trump. He is a human being. And so I will practice compassion for him, but that does not mean just allowing him to do whatever he wants to do. For me, having compassion, even for what I think is evil, is all about not letting that evil corrupt me. I don't want to become the kind of person that will readily demonize another person. And because I think once we go down that route, it's over for all of us. And so I do think we have to have compassion. I'm not going to tell other people what they need to do, but this is my spiritual practice. And so when I oppose Trump, and I can be very vocal and angry, but that's part of compassion. Real compassion. I mean, it has passion right in the name.
Yeah.
Compassion is not necessarily just like, oh, there, dear, everything's going to be okay. No, that can be enabling. I have compassion for our citizens, for the world, for the environment. I have love of the Constitution and the rule of law. And so those are things that I want to fight for. But I can't fight for those things effectively if I've allowed my anger to poison me. I need to direct my anger into right action, and that's guided by compassion.
Interesting. We have to let our anger guide us, but it has to lead us into compassion. That's an interesting way of thinking about it, because you don't really okay, it's really hard to think about being compassionate to Donald Trump.
Yes. I think it's the hardest thing ever right now.
I think I could even I could probably stomach being nice to the women in his family, because I feel like a lot of them, I don't know, I might be being too generous, but the men, it's just like the idea of being nice to any of them, like any of his children, any of him, like anything that touches him just makes you want to crawl out of your skin sometimes. But you raise a very interesting point, because we as witches, we should be very angry, we should be very focused and using our magics to stop this fight of fascism. But at the same time, we have to remember that our motives are from a place of caring about the world.
Yes.
We as witches are stewards and stewardesses of the world. And so when we remind ourselves about that we are the ones who care for nature, care for the village witch was the person that you would go to if you had a sickness and you needed a remedy. It was her job, but she also could fuck you up if you were and I think we've been saying here on our show a little bit that we need to go back to the part where you should kind of be a little bit afraid of witches, honestly. You should remember that just because we're nice and we will help you doesn't mean we will not fuck you up if you have earned it.
Yeah. And you can do that with compassion.
It's all
because
comes from
compassion is not the same as being nice.
Yeah.
You know,
Compassion
so
is just...
I'm not going to be nice to Donald Trump. If I was to meet Donald Trump, I wouldn't be nice to him. I wouldn't shake his hand. I wouldn't beat him up. Well, first of all, because I wouldn't get the opportunity, you know. But but
I
you know,
mean,
but no, compassion is not the same as being nice. And
is it?
so I think we need to make that distinction, because compassion. I think true compassion is fierce. You know, it is a commitment that we are making to ourselves, to the universe, that we're going to try to make things better.
Yeah.
And, you know, I also think of that phrase, kill them with kindness, right? And I kind of feel like, okay, that to me feels like something that I can live by, right? I'm going to be kind, but being kind doesn't mean I'm not going to be a warrior too, you know? Now, if it came to warriorship, and how are you going to define that, right? You know, we could talk about the spiritual warrior, if you will, the nonviolent spiritual warrior. You know, but I think it is, I think, the hardest thing that we can do. I think just in general, like cultivating compassion unto all beings, you know, if I'm going to kind of show my Buddhism side, you know, a little, my teeny little Buddhism side, you know, I think that is a guiding principle that will help us, you know. And we really saw just recently with, you know, like the assassination of Charlie Kirk, you know, that the idea of empathy, you know, has come up, and on the right, you know, them basically saying, oh, it's the sin of empathy, you know. And Charlie Kirk didn't like empathy. He didn't like the word empathy, you know, although he said he liked compassion, you know. But I'm like, okay, well then maybe practice some of it. But I don't know. I think even outside of the impending fascism that we're all dealing with, cultivating a sense of compassion for all beings, I can't think of anything more difficult in terms of a spiritual practice, because everything in life tends to drag us away, you know, from kindness and compassion. It's easier to have the knee-jerk reaction of anger and hatred. And I'm not saying that all that is wrong. You know, I hate fascism, right?
Yeah.
But I'm not going to focus on the hatred. I'm going to focus on the love. I love freedom. You know, I love equality. I love diversity. And so my fight is fueled by that love, by that compassion.
Yeah.
So I think it's really, really difficult. But I'm not telling other people what they have to do. I'm not saying, oh, everybody, in order to do it right, you have to focus on compassion. No, I'm not a guru. I'm not a cult leader. I'm not here to tell other people how to think. I'm going to tell you what my conclusion is, and this is how I'm doing it. But I really think that we need a multi-pronged approach to this war, and it is a war. You know, I do feel like it's been a culture war. This is basically the second Civil War. It just hasn't come to armed blows. Hopefully it won't. But we will see. I mean, we already saw the insurrection on January 6th, right? So it's already been a freaking war. You know, but, you know, we need a multi-pronged approach. So in the civil rights movement, we had Martin Luther King Jr., but we also had Malcolm X. And we needed both of those philosophies. We still need all that, you know. We need a place for our righteous anger, but we need to direct our righteous anger in a way that's effective and is not just destructive across the board, right? Because we have to continue to be here for our fellow citizens. And if the government, especially the federal government, I'm lucky I live in California, you know, so the state government is really stepping up.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Congrats on your Prop 50, by the way. Congrats on that.
Woot!
Yes.
By a landslide. That was awesome. So that gives me hope, right? And of course the Republicans are suing, but of course they will. And, you know,
of course they
that's
will.
their right. So, you know, we'll see where that goes. But
it's their right. Doesn't mean that they're going to win.
We'll see how it happens.
Do the two of you have anything you want to add? Because you two have been like lapping it up like homemade ice cream.
Yes. So I am inclined to agree with most of what you said. I do think that and this is something that we've said before, everyone has their role to play in the resistance. Everyone has, some of us are going to be a little more violent when it comes to getting results. We have also said before that we've seen what nonviolence has done, and it doesn't really get results the way that causing mess will do. Yeah. Good trouble. There we go. I had more thoughts, but I'm losing my train of thought, so I'm going to stop now.
Yeah, same page, I think, as a person of color, and I'm not going to speak for anyone, but I think for us POCs, it's a little more difficult to address things in a way of compassion when we have been murdered and slaughtered for so long. And agreed, like, you know, yes, okay, we've tried peaceful protest, we've tried this like thing, and now it's not working. It's time to move a more wrathful way. I mean, even MLK, before his life was ended, was actually moving towards more of the violence and getting things actively done through direct action before he was murdered. And I think, too, on that note of, like, Buddhism, just, like, remembering, like, for our listeners that there are wrathful spirits in Buddhism. Even the Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva of compassion, has a wrathful face. So just keep that in mind. I think it's hard because, like, yesterday at work, I heard a white man say something about how, like, everyone just needs to realize that we're all created equal. We're all the same, all this and that. And I like looked over, and of course it was this white man saying all this. And it's like, okay, you realize that you are like the mouthpiece of why that's not true. So it's crazy sometimes to like see these kind of concepts. And I honestly, for me personally, not speaking on anybody else's, putting words in anybody else's mouth, I believe the time for peaceful approaches is done. Go pick something up and throw it, light some shit on fire.
I mean, I totally support that, you know, and I've been called out publicly for that too. You know, even though my first inclination for myself is nonviolence. I kind of, my joke, not joke, is that my philosophy about all this, I really learned from watching Star Trek. So it's diplomacy first, but if that doesn't work, fire the photon torpedoes, right? And so I absolutely agree. I don't know that there's any time in history, please correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know if there's any time in history where an oppressed people have just asked nicely for their equality and been given that.
Didn't you hear about the American Revolution? We only just sent a page to King George and was like, hey, can we just, you know, be free? And he was like, absolutely, guys.
The bay, and it was over, right? All nice and simple. I remember during the, the Black Lives Matters protests, you know, that were going on, and you know, in some cities, you know, they were really hyping it up, riots, and you know, and yeah, there was some of that, but you know, it was really blown out of proportion. But at the time, I'm like, hello, I totally get it. If like for 500 years, your people have been oppressed and have been murdered and made slaves, and you're watching in the modern era where unarmed black men are getting murdered, you know, by largely white police officers. Yeah, I understand that anger, and I understand wanting to, you know, torch police cars or, you know, all the stuff, you know, it was how I get that. And I'm not going to stand in the way of that. I think that that's an appropriate response after all of this violence. They're literally being murdered. That doesn't negate my spiritual approach to this. However, I still think that compassion is the necessary guiding force, but that doesn't necessarily mean nonviolence, you know, and I will choose nonviolence first. But I recognize there comes a point where maybe that's not going to be effective. And it's like, what, are you just going to roll over and let them like exterminate your whole families? I mean, we're literally putting people in concentration camps right now. And I know people have come from, it's not a concentration camp. It actually is. It might not be a death camp, but it, you know, yet, I don't know, you know, the year is young, right? So we will see where that goes.
There are actually rumors that it might be. There are actually rumors that it might be.
Yeah, exactly. And so, but people, even just just labeling it a concentration camp, you know, people are so bent out of shape. Oh, that's not true. And, you know, blah, blah, blah. It literally is true. You have a camp, you are concentrating a population there. That is the definition of a concentration camp. Plus, there's no due process. And this whole weird idea from the right that like, oh, well, they're not citizens, so they're not entitled to due process. That is not what the Constitution says. The Constitution says everybody has the right to due process. If you're here on our soil, you have the right to due process. How do you know that somebody's a criminal unless you have gone through due process? You are innocent until proven guilty. That's what that means. That's the cornerstone of the American philosophy. And yet one of our parties is so willing to just throw that out because it's fucking racism. Mm-hmm. I can come to no other conclusion that it's just this deeply ingrained racism that is allowing these people to do this. And at some point you have to say no, no more. So I right now I'm in favor of a general strike. I think that people need to just stop everything. And, this is not a political difference. This is not really politics. This is a moral issue. This is a humanitarian crisis.
It's one of those things that these Christians, and I say Christians because it is Christians, it's these Christian nationalists who want to impose their version of Sharia law on us. And the hilarity of it is unfounded on me. It never ends. But it's why do you want to impose your faiths onto me when I haven't done anything to you? I don't even know you, and you want me to believe in your God, and that's just the mindset of a colonizer. It's the mindset of the, all of these things. But it's still one of those things that, like, what makes you think? I was a Christian for 12 years, and even I didn't think that my God was the only God. Like, come on.
It literally says so in the Bible. The Bible acknowledges other gods,
Literally.
So,
but
come on. The reading comprehension is not strong with this community. So.
No. And we can make English translations of the Bible that make the words as ridiculously simplified as you can get, and you still won't even understand. But that's beside the point, because, it doesn't matter what version of the Bible it is. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. This is the whole of the law. That's it. Game over.
Can you, what Bible or what book and verse is that? Do you know off the top of your head? Because there's this one version of the Bible. The wording is so funny. If I can just look it up real quick. We can cut this. I'm just curious.
Why would we cut this? No, but I think it's Matthew. Do unto others as you would have them do. The golden rule. Matthew. Oh, God. I used to know this. I was supposed to be a pastor at one point and look at
Someone go to the Googles.
Matthew 7:12. And again in Luke 6:31. But that's beside the point. It always broke my brain because I was a Christian, and you had Christians who would you could tell they were not reading the Bible. How are you not reading the Bible? And how are you not practicing what you cannot come to the conclusions that you are coming to as a Christian if you read the book that you read. It pushes you into becoming more of a liberal or a socialist. It just does. Because it's about, you read these stories about like an Acts where all of the apostles were just sharing and giving, and everybody pooled all the resources they had together, and they fucking did that. And then you have these Christians that are like, fuck that, fuck these immigrants, I don't want anything to do with them. What are you doing? Literally, you are not following the book that you said, because if you were, that book says that you need to be treating the foreigners as if they are your own kind. You need to be treating these foreigners as if they are like your own brothers and sisters, and you are not doing that. And you call yourself a Christian? You call yourself a fucking Christian. Your Christ does not know you. Your Christ hates you. He hates you. Want to know why? Because he says he hates the people like you. He hates the people that are two-faced and fucking these goddamn hypocrites. And I hate them. I hate them so much. I hate Christians so much that act like that. Why can't we just have the Christians that understand that God is love and that all of these things... I'm sorry, I'm on one right now because it just really upsets me. But if there's anything that this mandate has told me, it's that the people are awake. Woke is back. Woke is back.
I love it. Love it.
the last
Yeah, it
time
certainly gave me a lot of
Put the
hope.
pronouns back in the bio.
put the pronouns back in the bio. The last time a mayoral candidate in New York City won with over 1 million votes, it was in 1969. Now, all of us here are a bit too young to remember that, but in our lives, where have we seen other periods of history and like our struggle? It seems to be coming for us again. Like these things. How am I wanting to word this? It's like we've seen the people come together as a collective and push back. I think the most recent one is when Barack Obama won the first time and the second time. The second time he was actually down in the polls. It was like Mitt Romney seemed inevitable, but he came back and crushed it. And we see that, but like it's. I don't want to say this because it feels different than it does. Like if you think about like LGBT struggles, the civil rights movement, these things where people had to come together and collectively push back against the government. Yes, that got stuff done. But it also feels like this is different. This is not the same as just pushing back on a government policy. You are literally taking our rights away from us. You are literally making life impossible to live. And you want us to just sit there and do nothing. And it feels like the only thing we can do is either vote or, as Lynn and Sebastian have said, just go burn it down. And honestly, I kind of am just in the camp of like, sure, the voting works. We just saw that. Like this mandate of the people where they were like, fuck that. We are just, going for it. But I don't personally think there's going to be elections next year. That might listen, this might come back to haunt me in the future when I say this, but I don't think there's going to be elections next year the way that we see them now. I think what's going to happen personally is that Trump is going to continue invading cities, creating a presence amongst the liberal cities in particular, and making it hard for people to want to go vote because they're scared to be going to these lines. It's not that they're going to say you can't vote. It's just they're going to make you getting to the polling place as impossible as it can be.
I mean, that was even happening during this election.
It's happening now, but it's...
Yeah. He was sending his, secret police, in as a intimidation tactic. And I'm glad to say that a lot of people were just not having it. I think a lot of people really showed up. They braved it, and they showed up anyway. But that's exactly what Trump was trying to do. I mean, he's so transparent about it. It's so funny how he, on one level, I'm sure he thinks he's opaque. But he's so transparent because he is such a narcissist that he doesn't even believe that he's going to be held accountable. So he can just say whatever he wants. I mean, this is basically, campaigning for the first term when he said he could shoot someone dead in Times Square or on Fifth Avenue or whatever he said, and he wouldn't lose any voters, that showed us who he is right there. When he mocked the disabled reporter, that showed us who he is, so we've seen all this. The fact that some people are still insisting that, oh, he's awesome. He's, he's so Christian, whatever. I'm like, oh my God, you know what? You people are really, Hillary was right with her basket of deplorables comment, except that it wasn't harsh enough, in my opinion. No. Now, it also kind of, I think did cost her some points, in the election, but she was right. Pretty much everything she said was right. Everything Kamala said was right. We have these two really, and I'm not saying that there isn't criticism. You could have criticism of Hillary Clinton at the time, whatever, and Kamala. There are legitimate things to criticize about both of those candidates. But, oh my goodness, so much better than what we have now. It was not even an issue of a choice, but here we are. This also shows me how deeply, not only racist, but how misogynistic our society is, that the very qualified women were just passed over, because, and it's in favor of another white dude, right?
Well, and it's also the fact that you raised a very interesting question or point. It's not that, it wasn't the question of if they're qualified or not. It's just, I think that what happened in this last election in particular, in 2024, was we saw a increase in the cost of living that was not being met with the same messaging as Trump was giving, where his messaging was simple. I'm going to bring costs down day one, right? Was that a lie? Obviously. But his messaging did not waver. People didn't, and not to say that the greater population is stupid, but they kind of are. Kamala was talking about wanting to give us, $25,000 in a tax credit for our first-time home buyers. That would be amazing. That would be fucking amazing. Mm-hmm. However, a lot of people aren't even thinking about the idea of owning a home.
Right.
That policy was so out of touch with what the voters are looking for. And the whole reason that we see Zoran Mamdani win and become America's mayor is because he listened to the people.
Yeah, absolutely.
During the debates, there was a question asked by all three candidates, or of all three candidates. What are the top two concerns of New Yorkers, right? And everybody said, I think the first two was like the rats and the fucking garbage and shit like that. And Zoran was like noise and transportation. And it was noise and illegal parking, fun fact, were the top two concerns in New York City. But he was the only one that answered the first part correctly, noise. And that comes from listening to your constituents. He was out there being like, what is it that is wrong with this, and what do you want us to fix? And they were like, this is what it is, and this is what... And then you build a campaign around it. It sounds so novice, but it is not fucking novice. Just do that, and you will win. But we can't, because we have to... the Democrats lately have decided that it's just time to go and be... status quo is what we need again. We need to go back to the status quo. And if this election showed us anything... it's that we don't need the status quo anymore. It's time to shake things up.
Yes. We need to shift the country farther to the left. We do not have a viable leftist movement in the United States. I know a lot of times from the right, we hear, the Democrats, they're radical leftists. Oh my God. The Democratic Party, they're centrists at best. I consider them to be right of center. When politicians talk about progressive values, then the populace gets fired up about it, right? This is why people love AOC. Also she's fucking badass. I love her.
Yeah.
Her social media savvy is amazing, right? And so that's what's giving me hope. People like her, Jasmine Crockett, and now Mamdani, these are people that I feel like this is what I want the Democratic Party to be. Chuck Schumer's got to go. I'm sorry. His time is done. He represents the oligarchy side of the Democratic Party. Yeah. And that's the old power that's been so entrenched. But I also recognize in our system, we have a two-party system for the most part, right? And the Democrats are our best weapon right now against fascism. So I'm always going to encourage people to vote. I'm going to, especially in these days, vote blue. But that's not all we need to do, because obviously there's a lot of people in the Democratic Party on the blue side that are useless, that are actually standing in the way of reasonable change, right? But I don't think that means we throw the baby out with the bathwater. I think that we need to cultivate a kinder, even angrier and lefter Democratic Party than what we've had. And I'm seeing that happen, with all the people, supporting Bernie, again, AOC, Jasmine Crockett, all of them. And that gives me hope that there can be a Democratic Party that emerges from this, that is more on the left, that is going to be effective for helping people, and addressing the issues of our time. Climate change. Oh my gods. This is the survival of our species, people, and if you care about that, you have to care about climate change. It's not a freaking hoax. It's, oh my God, but this whole idea that, both sides, this whole both sidesism, I think is what is killing us. Because so many times people have come to me and they're like, oh, well, the Democrats are just as bad. They're just as corrupt. I'm like, only one party is building concentration camps. They're not the same. Yes, the Democratic Party is also corrupt because every political party has corruption because humans become corrupt. That's the common denominator. It's not necessarily the political system. People are like, oh, well, you can't do socialism. Socialism is corrupt. I'm like, well, yeah, but that wasn't real socialism. People say, oh, well, the Nazis were socialists. No, they weren't. It was in their name, but they were not. Look, it's demonstrable. You could look it up. They were not socialists, I consider myself a democratic socialist. I really do think we need to come together to help one another. That's what a civilization is about, right? We come together, we pool our resources, we help the weakest of our members. And yet one party is actively trying to exterminate the weakest of our members. We are not the same.
I think that's definitely something to bring up. First and foremost, everyone knows this already. Bring back the guillotines. Bring them back. So that is definitely something for reference as like, oh yeah, bring back the guillotines. I think too, part of the problem that I'm seeing personally is that there's this concept of like, oh, go vote, go vote, go vote. Yeah, okay, cool, awesome. Look what voting has done for us. Again, it's like this concept of like, okay, cool, yes, this concept that voting helps. Okay, yes, to a degree it does. But I think part of the problem too is this raising of, oh my God, this politician's going to save us. No, they're not.
Right.
No one's going to save you. You need to go out there and do shit. Even the politician that you think is going to save you needs to be scared of you.
Yes.
That it doesn't matter what party, which of course there is an implication there. But just like they are not your savior. They are not going to get things done. At the end of the day, they are still a politician, and they can say whatever they want because they have to. They're a politician. It doesn't matter what side they're on. They're just going to say what they need. And at the end of the day, they're still going to do whatever's in their best interest as an individual. It's not really about the people as a whole. We've seen that in action. And this isn't just like an idea. Like if people can start showing things, because like, again, right, words are just words. Let's see with action what is actually being done. That is where things should actually matter. And we can see that there is, unfortunately, action of crimes against humanity being done by a certain group of people. So what are we going to do as a civilization, as a people, as a community to confront this, to bring this change, right? Like, yes, we can go vote, but if they're affecting our votes, then what can we go do in order to ensure that we are in seeing and enacting the change in the direction that we need for the sake of us as humans, not even just as a certain party. This involves everybody in some degree. That this is just like straight up, I don't know how to, it's just crimes against humanity, honestly. Like, I don't understand how anyone could see it as anything other than that. Like, this isn't political.
Yeah, agreed. Absolutely. Like I said before, this is not really about having political differences. I think a political difference is differences in crafting policy, right? That's what we normally think of as political. But putting, innocent people, and they're innocent until proven guilty. That's what sets us apart, supposedly, from, the non-civilizations of the world, right? But like voting, getting back to the voting thing, voting is so important. It is absolutely so important. I hate it when people say, oh, I don't vote because it doesn't matter. Oh my God. I just want to throttle those people. But at the same time, I'm not here to say that voting is the one thing, right? Voting is one thing among many that we need to do, but we do need to do it if you're going to do nothing else, if you're only going to do one thing, then vote, but let's try to do two things, try to vote and then talk to people. Try to change people's minds. I have a small platform. I have a monthly column for the Wild Hunt, the pagan news website, and I don't know, they have a larger social media reach than I do on my own. So it's a little bit of a platform. And so I make it a point of talking about these things publicly, even though I get a lot of flack for it, right? I think I was talking about this with you guys before the show. I get a lot of flack for it. And, it's sometimes a little scary. I get weird threats. I get weird magical threats, I'm like, okay, that's fun. But, it was a little scary at first because I felt like, I'm putting myself out there. And I know also, as a business owner, I used to have a brick and mortar store. And, but one thing was like, I'm not going to not use my voice. And of course, the wisdom, quote unquote, at the time was, oh, well, if you're in business, you need to not be publicly political because you're going to alienate half your customers, whatever. I'm like, if I'm alienating half my customers, that's the half of my customers I don't want to be in business with, So I was always outspoken. I've always been politically outspoken, because I feel like I feel safer. I live in the San Francisco Bay Area. It's a liberal bubble, and so I feel like I have a privilege. Also, as a white cis man, I have certain privileges. And so I want to be able to use my privileges to help, amplify the message of equality, of diversity. I think it's really, really important. But not everybody can do that. So I'm not out there saying, oh, well, you have to do that. That might not be safe for you. You might live in Alabama, and that might not be safe for you and your family. So maybe you have to be, a closeted liberal, right? You have to do what's going to be safe for you and your family. But we have to decide, what am I going to do besides vote? Because it's not just about the vote. But the vote is so important. I can't stress that enough, Yeah, I don't know. Some of the flack I've gotten before has been, oh, you're trying to tell people how to vote. Well, at some point, yeah, I was telling people you need to vote for Hillary because if Trump gets in, this is horrible, right? And my idea, I didn't love Hillary. I didn't vote for her in the primary, but I voted for Bernie in the primary because I really loved his message. And I loved how a lot of young people were empowered by his message. And, I thought that was great. Obviously, there are some people that like, oh, well, when Bernie was no longer a choice, they went right for Trump. I'm like, wow, this was a whole segment of society I didn't know existed. And yet I was right there on the pulse of it because I owned a metaphysical store. And let me tell you, when the pandemic happened, and we ended up closing our store during the pandemic, best decision we ever made. But we knew as soon as that happened, we were like, oh my God, we're going to have to deal with weird conspiratorial Karens. And where our shop was in Walnut Creek, California, I jokingly called Karen Central because it's an affluent town. And so we would get these largely women, white women that would come in, and they were maybe socially liberal, but fiscally conservative, right? Which is such a weird flex, like, what? And then they're not actually socially progressive, it's like it all comes down to the whole Republican thing. But I was like, oh no, I know we're going to get people coming in and saying, oh, you shouldn't be wearing a mask because carbon dioxide is bad for you and blah, blah, blah. Or, and that's true, that did happen. Oh, just don't buy into it because we all create our own reality. And if you are wearing a mask and trying to protect yourself, you're just feeding into this idea and you're creating a world in which this virus is, taking over. I literally had somebody once use that argument for why they would not recycle, because they felt that by recycling, you were reinforcing the idea that the world was in danger. And so all of us recyclers, we were creating this world in which it was all environmentally unstable, but she didn't even care about that. So she was creating a reality in which there was no problem.
I can't.
I'm like, wow, this just sums up that mindset, doesn't it? Right.
I just refuse to believe that people like this exist. Like it just cannot be real. Like they have to be sent. Like they have to be infiltrating from like other areas just to like mess with us. Like this
you
has
to believe?
Be, like what the
it's
fuck?
It's got to be a psyops, right? This is a psyop. Wow, no, this is this is white women. I'm sorry, and I don't want to just blame the white women, because we should be blaming the white men too.
No, let's do.
Let's do it. But oh my God, and of course, and there's also, of course, people of color that fall into that. It's the weirdest fucking thing when I see like a person of color who's pro-Trump.
Yeah. What are you doing? Like, what are you doing?
Don't even get me
telling
started on the
us. You're
Latinos for
telling
Trump.
us.
Oh my God. Do not
The
even get
call
me
is
started on
coming
the
from
Latinos for
inside
Trump.
the house.
Oh my God.
Oh
I know.
my God.
The call is
Anybody can be an idiot. Even normally smart people can be an
Except
idiot.
for me. I can't be an idiot.
I mean, I don't know.
Listen, I'm so smart. I can't be an idiot ever. I'm like the smartest person. Actually, my IQ is like 460. So like, y'all can, what is it? The suck it that they say in the W.
Are you
feel
sure
like
that
now
wasn't
you're
just a
planning
mental
to be the next
evaluation?
I am.
feel like
I'm
now you're
planning
just
to be.
campaigning to be the next
Listen,
Republican president.
I
It's
had a
just like,
dream.
you have all the words. You got the biggest words.
I had a dream. So, okay, this is a little off topic, but it's kind of on brand. So, are we familiar with who Graham Plattner is?
I'm not.
He's currently running for Senate in Maine. He's very cis hetero white man, but super far left. Like, called himself a communist on social media back in the day. Like, that's how far left he is. But
Love it.
there's a little bit of controversy right now with him because when he was a Marine, he got a tattoo that was actually a Nazi tattoo, and he didn't realize it when he was like 20 years old. But that's a different conversation. The point is that like these people are I just lost my train of thought because of Graham Plattner's Nazi tattoo.
Right? That's where my brain is now. I'm like, oh my God, dude, there's lasers now.
He ended up getting it covered and such, but it's like we need more people, like especially white people, who are willing to put themselves out there like that and take the heat and the flack, but stand on the right side of history. We need more younger Bernie Sanders. We need more, and we need people left of Bernie. We need left of left. Like keep going further left. And you said something about like as a shop owner, the Sanders to Trump pipeline is something that will be studied for political generations, because for people to have gone from that to this, sure, Trump and Sanders were both populists. They still are. They just have a different type of populist message. Right. Trump's is utter fascism. Bernie's is utter socialism. And to conflate the two is just to be asinine. However, I will still never understand that pipeline, because to me it feels like mixing water and oil. How are you getting to the same conclusion? Like, what is this? And I don't know.
It's really kind of scary because it just flies in the face of conventional wisdom. And I don't know, to me, it's so far out of left field that I just wasn't prepared for it, right? Like we had this woman who was a reader at our shop, right? And I liked her. She seemed really balanced. I will say the one thing that was maybe a little red flag in the beginning was that she was really invested in the whole Doreen Virtue stuff. And if you're not familiar with Doreen Virtue, she had a whole cottage industry. She had all these oracle cards. It was all about the angels, and she wrote all these books on angels. And then she got into cards on fairies and mermaids, and it was all positive. It was all very toxic positivity. Like, she even did a tarot deck, but she changed all the negative cards to something positive. And her whole thing was like, well, maybe if you're like me, you just can't take the negative messages. And so I'm like, well, that's not balanced. That's like, I'm just going to eat a diet completely based on sugar, right? Nutrients be damned, And so, but then of course, Doreen Virtue had this weird Christian epiphany where she has now rejected everything she stood for. And now she's hardcore Jesus. And so that caused a big ripple in the metaphysical community. But this particular reader, she seemed really balanced. She had gone through, got her certificate, went to the Hawaiian compound, paid her like $4,000 or whatever to be a certified angel card reader, right? And yet she seemed really balanced. And then after all the QAnon stuff started happening, I'm seeing her post on Facebook all this just straight QAnon shit, and Trump's going to save us. He's going to drain the swamp, down with the Democrat satanic pedophiles. I'm like, what happened to you? You were a real person. And now what has happened?
That's exactly what I was a Christian. I was at the tail end of my Christian journey when Doreen Virtue started doing the thing that she was doing, and she was on shows that I was listening to, like Cultish. She was on shows, talking to Steve. His name was Steve Burkaris or something. I don't know. The point is that it was like these New Agers who left the faith of, New Ageism or whatever because they quote unquote found Jesus. And it's like, but you're still collecting royalties on those checks. Like, you're not taking the money and donating it to the poor. You're still living off of all of these. And Doreen tried to be like, oh, I contacted Llewellyn and I contacted, Troy Books and things like that to get my cards pulled. And it's like, no, but you didn't, because they're still out there. They're still on the fucking shelves to this day. So what exactly did you do except nothing? Yeah.
But the whole, like, the mentality of it where you could be, at least on the surface, progressive, and then what changed? Now you're literally supporting a fascist. Mm-hmm. I'm blown away by that.
Yes. There's one more question I'm going to ask, and then do we have a working this week, Sebastian? Or since this is our week of, like, being happy and joyful, we don't necessarily need one unless we want to fight some bitches.
I'm always down to fight some bitches, but I think this week we're going to kind of settle in, give everyone like a break to kind of just settle, celebrate, have a little bit of time of joy and celebration of hope before we start diving back into some of the workings that I provide.
Oh yeah, because they're quite intensive and wonderful. Storm, you should read some of the things that you should join our Patreon and see what Sebastian writes, because honestly, for $1 a month, you could get all of these lovely things. No, the last question that we have is, how does one find their spot in the resistance? We all have different offerings, talents, skills, knowledge, and also weaknesses, limitations, gaps in knowledge, etc. I feel like everyone has sort of plateaued, or is sort of plateauing, because perhaps social media is making them feel like they have to do and know everything. And of course we know that it's not sustainable. What's a way we as individuals could sit and ponder, then act on, where we can individually fit into the larger picture? Do you have tools, tips, suggestions? How can we get each other to act and discuss / argue more online?
Do we need to argue more online? I don't know. That's the question for the ages now. I actually kind of feel like social media has been a bad thing for humanity, but it's not going anywhere. So we need to figure out how to make it a good thing. Do we need to argue more online? I mean, sometimes we do need to argue.
Apologies for interrupting. The end of the question is, how can we get each other to act more and discuss, argue online less?
Oh my God.
Okay.
I'm leaving. I'm done.
Yeah, well, here's my thing. Choose your battles. Not every opinion on the internet needs to be addressed, and I say this as somebody who has often been triggered by things that people will say on the internet, and I will come in guns blazing, and sometimes that's necessary.
Yeah.
I think sometimes that's necessary. I'm not advocating that people just shut the fuck up, but I do think that we have to choose our battles. And there's a lot of trolls on the internet, and all they want is that negative interaction. And by you giving it to them, you're just feeding the trolls, So not every opinion is worth responding to. I'm gonna say that. So I definitely try to choose my battles. I definitely went through this period with Trump's first term, where every day I was responding negatively to him, because I was on Twitter. I loved Twitter back in the day, and I made it part of my spiritual practice. I was posting about him or directly to him every day, But it was eating my life force. And I realized I was becoming bitter and sick. It was making me mentally ill. It was making me physically ill. And so I decided I'm not going to do that every day. I'm still going to stand up and speak, when I think it's necessary. Like I said, I have my little teeny platform that I'll write stuff about. But in terms of like, I don't know, how can we argue less? That's my first step, is like, I'm just going to argue less. If I don't know who this person is, I'm going to scroll by. I block people at the drop of anybody's hat. And I will encourage people, blockity, block. Okay, do it. It's for your mental health. Not everybody deserves access, to your energy.
Storm blocked me just the other day because I said that his hair looks funny, and it was like, yeah, absolutely.
But I, in terms of like, I don't know, on social media is such a mixed bag. Right? Because we also don't know that everybody's real. Look up dead internet theory. There's so many bots, and I don't know if this person is real. So why am I wasting my time, on this? So I don't argue with strangers online much. I have a little bit, but my approach now is, instead of just being angry about it, I'm going to approach it with humor, because I find that often really pisses off the other person.
Yes.
If I approach it with humor, or I'm kind of dismissively humorous about it, that kind of takes the power out of their argument. So I will do stuff like that. If I'm feeling particularly angry about something, I'm not going to post right away, or maybe I will channel that anger into something else. I'll post for the Wild Hunt, or I'll do a blog post, or my own Facebook post, or whatever. I don't have to address that person. Because that's just giving them what they want, so I'm not gonna feed the trolls. And I block people. I've definitely unfriended people, even people that I know in real life. I've even unfriended some people that are definitely leftists, because they're just fucking assholes. And if I see you being unkind, as a general rule, I don't want you in my sphere, No. So, there you go.
I love it.
So, I don't know. Love it. So pay attention to your own energy, conserve your energy, because we need all of us in this fight. And if we're just wasting our energy, spinning our wheels, responding to trolls, then we don't have any energy to actually fight the good fight. But the fight is really mostly not happening on social media. That's a little bit of it. But I don't know. Again, vote. If you can, attend a protest. Write your Congress people all the time. And I don't know. What's the next step after that? I mean, we talked a little bit about the possibility of Molotov cocktails at some point, right? I would like to think it would not come to that. I would like to think that it would not come to that, but it might.
I mean,
the bricks call to me like the Green Goblin.
The bricks do call to me like the Green Goblin. Oh my god. I love that. With that said, I'm going to wrap this up and say that this has been the Ember Report, where resistance is witchy and spells are not optional. I'm Lydian, the voice in the flame. I'm Lydian, the voice in the flame.
We have too many documents, I'm sorry.
Same. I have 3 documents
at the crossroads. I'm switching between like 4 different documents of notes.
Okay, as I was saying, I'm Lydian, the voice in the flame.
I'm Len, the Witch of the Crossroads.
I'm Sebastian, the Sorcerer of Annihilation.
And this is our guest, Storm Faerywolf. Storm, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. It was an honor.
Of course. Yeah.
If today's fire stirred something in you, share it. Cast it wide.
If you'd like to linger a while, there's always tea on the stove, a place in the resistance, and room at our table.
And we will be carrying this Ember over to Ashes and Sparks, our Patreon after show for an extended conversation with just us today because we have taken so much of Storm's time. But you can find that at patreon.com/The Ember Report. For as little as $1, you can get access to our show and Discord server. Until next time.
May our rage spark resistance.
May our grief become fire.
May our magic be sharp and unrepentant.
The lantern is lit.
We're still out there.
And so are we.